tuning in my show this afternoon. In this segment, I will feature ancient Greek clothing and fashions. Greek clothes were extremely simple in design. Men wore tunics and women wore a robe called a chiton. Both were made from one or two regular pieces of cloth sewn up the sides and fastened at the shoulders with pins and brooches. To demonstrate Greek fashion, the Barbie Modeling Agency will put on the one and only Greek fashion show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Lights, please. Camera and action! Greek clothes were extremely simple in design. Men wore tunics and women wore a robe called a chiton. Both were made from one or two rectangular pieces of cloth sewn up the sides and fastened at the shoulders with pins and brooches. Tunics were normally knee length for young men and ankle length for older men. They were often worn with a belt and hitched up over to keep them in place. When the weather was hot, craftsmen and slaves often wore nothing more than a loincloth tied around the waist to keep them cool. Most Greeks went barefoot for much of the time or wore strappy leather sandals. Most people's clothes were made of plain wool or linen, although richer people could afford to dye or decorate them. Bright patterned fabrics were popular in the archaic period. Later, clothes were often of one shade, sometimes with a patterned border. People sometimes wore cloaks as well. A long one was called a himation. A short one was called a chlamys. Out in the sun, people often wore shady wide-brimmed hats. A chlamys was usually worn by soldiers or by younger men for hunting or riding. Two styles of a chiton, Doric and Ionic. The Doric chiton was a single piece of cloth folded over at the top and wrapped loosely around the body, with a belt and brooches the shoulders to make the armholes. The Ionic chiton was made from two pieces of cloth, stitched up the sides, fastened along the shoulders and arms with brooches. Men wore rings as ornaments, some with gems. Children wore an amulet, a small piece of jewelry designed as a charm against evil. Many pieces of jewelry were made of gold and decorated with beautiful designs. Women and sometimes men wore perfumes and cosmetics. It was fashionable to have a pale face, so women painted their faces with white lead, not knowing that it was poisonous. They used cheeks color and put soot on charcoal on their eyebrows and eyelids. Greek women liked red or green eyeshadow, and they painted their lips too. Fashion and hairstyles changed over the centuries. As time went on, men's hair and beards grew shorter and tidier, and women's hairstyles became higher and more elaborately styled. In classical times, women put up their hair with ribbons, hairnets, scarves, or gold bands. Men's beards were tidier. In the Hellenistic period, men shaved off their beards and women styled their hair with waves and curls. The end.